All right, what's up? So I'll be going through, you know, basic volleyball stuff. People have asked me for this a lot, so I'm just gonna go through this like in general. I'm gonna be talking about positions, rotations, builds, and the meta in Spiked. Although there is not one that's really established, like a solid meta, but I can tell you what are the current good really builds, like really good builds, okay? So, alright, to start off with positions, okay? I was gonna do a brief explanation because there's a lot of stuff, but this is gonna be a brief video. And if you guys have any questions, just let me know, I'll answer all of them, okay? So, first things first, we're gonna start with probably the most popular one, outside hitter. So, outside hitter is the hitter that plays on the left side of the court. So, usually there's two formations, I guess, that are mainly used in volleyball, in Roblox volleyball at least. There's a 4-2, and then there is a 5-1. So I think it's best if I explain that before I have to go to positions. So 5-1 is basically when you run one setter and three spikers. And then, I'm talking about the front row. So you have three spikers up forward, and then you have one setter who's in the back row, but he can set, right? And then with 4-2, you have two setters, so you always have a setter in the front row, but you don't have an opposite hitter, who is the setter who's behind the setter. Who's a hitter who's behind the setter, usually. So, or opposite to the setter in the rotation. That's why it's called an opposite. So, usually with the 5-1, you have an opposite, a middle blocker, and then an outside hitter. And these three are usually your main sources of scoring, right? But with the 4-2, when you have two setters, you don't have like an opposite hitter, so you only have two spiking options, which is not usually used much. And your middle is also really weak because, well, your setter's in the middle. So, but anyways, I'm gonna be talking about 5-1, which is the most popular one. So we're gonna start with outside, which is, well, on the left side of setter. It's like the kind of like the ace position, which most of the balls go to the outside. So in the anime, in Haikyuu, Asahi, Tanaka, Bokuto, they're all outside hitters, okay? Now, basically what outside hitters do, they score points. They receive every now and then, not too much because, well, yeah, it's just scoring points. And what you usually want to aim for with an outside hitter is going for long scoring points, crazy cuts, and block breaking sometimes. I mean, there's not much you can do for Spiker except like just score, I guess, because you receive on the left side of the court, and when you're in the front row as a wing spiker on the left side, as an outside on the left side, you just take shorts when you're a forward, and when you're not, when you're in the back row, you just take longs. It's fairly self-explanatory. There's nothing much to say. Now, the next thing I'm going to talk about is middle blocker. Okay. Now, as a middle blocker, it's basically what you do. You block, and blocking is a very good way to, continue rallies, get a point, or just apply a lot of pressure. Which, if you watch the anime, I'm sure you know everything about the positions, but this is just me explaining it in Spiked itself. So, in Spiked, your middle blocker just hits quicks a lot, and you have three types of sets that are very common, okay? So you have your wide set, or just your normal quick, which is just a set towards the net, towards the antenna, I mean, and the middle blocker just adjusts the set. Then you have a delay, or an open 4 set, okay? Which is, well, you toss it up high, and the spiker just jumps for it, and it's like a delay set, okay? And then you have slide, so you set a quick towards, like, behind you, and the middle blocker glides towards the right and hits it. So I'm sure you know all these terms from different volleyball games too, if you're coming back from a different volleyball game, but this is just, again, explaining this from the start. But middle blockers usually block quicks, they look out for apes, and their main job is just to apply pressure and do one touches or even kill blocks. I'll be talking more about, specific playstyles in the build section of the video, but for now, I'll just explain the positions, right? Middle blockers usually sub out, or do sub out with liberos, and I'll explain that later, okay? But middle blockers don't serve that much, so if you like serving, then middle blocker isn't the position that you want to go for, unless you really like blocking. Well, whatever. The next thing I'm going to talk about is setter. So I'm sure you already know what a setter is, but as a setter, you're supposed to block. As a setter, you're supposed to set. Main thing is you're supposed to set the ball. You're the reason that rallies go on. You're like the main control center of the team, okay? So you have 3 types of sets that you usually use, okay? You have a back row set for your opposite, your front row set for your opposite, and then you have your sets for the front row, which is your outside set, and then your middle set, okay? I'll explain that later. Actually, no, I should probably explain it right now. So for setter, you have, for let's say outside, you're setting an outside, You have an outside quick, which is just a full charge directly towards the antenna. You have a minus tempo if you're using the minus tempo weapon.
Minus tempo. Nice! Good one, Slime. That's the first minus tempo by me.
You have a medium, which is just a floaty, just like a really slow set up in the air. And you have a high, which is like really high and a slow set, okay? So those are your 4 types of sets. For middle, you have, like I said, you have wide, you have slide, and then you have delay, okay? I already explained that. For opposite, you have front row quick and back row quick, front row delay, back row delay. So I'll explain what front row and back row is in the next section, which is what I'm going to be talking about opposite now. So opposite is a unique position where you play the back row and the front row, and you're the only one in that position. Whereas with outside and middle blocker, there's 2 of them on the court, whereas there's only one opposite, right? So opposites are usually good at receiving because they play from the back row as well, and they're pretty good at, they're pretty good at defense, and they don't get as many sets unless you're like really fucking good and your team's like based around you. So an example of like an opposite would be Ushiwaka from Haikyuu, and Daichi. So there's like those like 2 different types. There's like really defensive types, there's really offensive types, okay? So next thing I want to explain is rotations. This is where I'll explain everything. So rotations in volleyball go in a clockwise order whenever you score a point in a row. So let's say my team was to serve and the opponent team loses the point, we don't rotate, right? But I serve, let's say I serve, they get the point, they serve, we get the point, then we rotate. I'll leave a link in the description for more detailed rotation explanations, but I'll just be explaining briefly right now. So in a 5-1 rotation, you usually start with a setter on the top right, your opposite to the setter, and so your wing spikers, so your outsides would start opposite to each other, and your middle blockers would start opposite to each other. I'll place an image up on the screen right now, so, or Alan will do it, I'll just give it to him. But it just shows you, you know, your normal position, okay? Now, the next thing is you just rotate normally, and the one thing I will talk about specifically with rotations is liberos and your opposites. So, liberos are defensive specialists, and they don't serve, they don't go in the front row at all, and they're in the game most of the time. This is what I meant by middle blocker substitution, where whenever the middle blocker serves, after the rally ends, the middle blocker in the back row subs out for the libero, so your defense is stronger, right? And they don't serve, they don't do anything, all they do is defense, right? So if you're into that, if you like that playstyle, then look into libero. And then your next thing about rotations is opposite. So whenever the opposite hitter goes to the back row, so when it's their serve, after the rotation, after the clockwise rotation, whenever it's their serve, they can still spike, but they'll have to jump from behind the attack line, which is the line where, you know, that divides back row and front row. So they jump behind the attack line, and usually for behind, like from like back row sets, you want to go for quicks. That's what I do at least, but I haven't messed around much with opposites, so I don't know. But I usually just go for quicks, and opposites can usually be mostly block breakers or people who wipe a lot in the front row. So something like Ricochet would be good for you if you're a type of person that likes to do that. And yeah, that's really all for opposite. That's really all for rotations. I'll be talking about builds now. I don't want to make this video too long. But for builds, I'm just going to brief this quickly. Outside, you're going to go for a fairly tall build. You're going to go for about 6'6" to 6'9". I don't suggest you go 7 foot because you're really slow. And your receive hitbox is way smaller. And you still have to receive as a outside hitter. Unlike, I don't know, maybe like a middle blocker. Okay. So you can go 6'6" to 6'9" is what I'd suggest. Along with boom jump. Boom jump is 100% needed. Always go boom jump. And then either powerful or block breaker, right? So that's the build you want to go for, depending on what you're comfortable with. If you don't feel like going block breaker or powerful, ricochet's also an option, but I don't suggest it. Alright, now middle blocker, you can go any height you want, but I suggest from 6'8" to 7 foot. Now, although you won't have much like running time at all, like hardly any because of how fat you are, but you'll have a lot of block hitbox, and unless you want to run like a Hinata build, you can go like 5'4" quick step, but I don't suggest it. I haven't seen many people use it properly, but if you do, go for it, right? But I suggest going, let's say 6'8", 6'9", and immovable if you like to do kill blocks. but there's a limit to it in scrims and leagues. There's a 1 weapon limit. Immovable, soft touch, iron wall. Those are your 3 weapons that you can go for, but your immovable and your soft touch is usually your primary weapon. And your 2 secondary weapons are either iron wall or quick step. So quick step is to read block, so you have a better like reaction time because you're so fat. But yeah, don't go boom jump because you're usually hitting quicks and you don't need boom jump for that. So yeah, and the taller you are, the more power you have, so that's better, right? Now, the next thing I want to talk about is setter. So setter, I run a 5'9" build, but since you're gonna be blocking a lot as well, I suggest from like 6'5" or 6'4" to about 6'7" is what I'd say. Because you need to be able to receive every now and then. No, you don't need to receive at all. What the fuck am I saying? You need to be able to cover. That's what I was talking about. Cover. I've explained covering and everything in a different video. But yeah, you have to cover every now and then. You have to block most of the time, and you want to be able to reach high balls with your jump, so you can set in case the ball's going over the net. So I run 5'9" because I'm just stupid, and I enjoy 5'9". It's easier to serve too. So. But, you know, I suggest that sort of height. You can go perfect toss, conductor, or minus tempo. So I personally suggest perfect toss and minus tempo. And if you want to run a half serve, half setter build, then I'd say go powerful. So I say go float and perfect toss. Or you go conductor and float. Like conductor or perfect toss are like supposed to be your primary weapons of setter. And then minus tempo, you can run it if you really want. But it's fairly readable once you start using it a lot. And if you want to serve float or powerful, but I'd say you leave your powerful to your spikers, like the slot for powerful, because there's a limit of 2 powerfuls in a team. So I suggest you keep powerful on on your spikers, and you take float because float doesn't have a limit more than 2. So yeah, those are your setter builds. Now opposite, you want to go for a similar build. You want to go for a little shorter height since you're going to be receiving a lot. So I'd say about 5'8" to 6'3" is what I suggest. You want to go boom jump, 100% boom jump, and you could either go if you really wanted, you could go block breaker, ricochet, or perfect receive if you really want. But I don't really suggest perfect receive, or like something that's defensive, so like safeguard or perfect receive. But I say boom jump and block breaker is probably the best build if you have, or powerful. So spikers don't have much of a difference in builds except height. So yeah, and liberos is so you wanna go for 5 foot. You wanna go for 5 foot. You wanna go for safeguard guardian. That's your best build, hands down. Okay, like with 5 foot, you don't really need perfect receive unless your setter really needs it, and you guys are doing like a specific play. I heavily suggest safeguard and guardian because once you're good at libero, you don't really need perfect receive. So yeah. Anyways, I mean, this video is already fairly long, so I'm not going to be talking about the meta, because there hardly is any meta. It's just play volleyball. There's no meta yet. There's not really much of a meta in volleyball games, except like maybe going really tall heights. But yeah, that's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed. And let me know if you have any questions. Let me know if you want to see other gameplay. Spike is closed right now, so I can't really do much. But yeah, I'll help you out as much as I can. And I will see you in the next one.